9. Hannah Payne. In May of 2019, 21-year-old Hannah Payne followed 62-year-old Kenneth Herring after she witnessed him leaving the scene of a car crash in Clayton County, Georgia, that she was not directly involved in. According to authorities, Herring had run a red light and struck an 18-wheeler, damaging both vehicles. He stayed at the accident scene for 15 to 20 minutes before he drove off. An off-duty corrections officer who stopped at the scene noticed that Herring appeared to be in some sort of diabetic or medical shock, but Payne reportedly thought he was drunk and made it her personal mission to catch up with him. During the pursuit, Payne dialed 911 and reported Herring's license plate number. The dispatcher advised her to return to the accident scene, but she ignored that advice. About a mile from the crash site, Payne blocked Herring's pickup truck with her Jeep and approached the truck on foot. The ensuing confrontation ended with Payne fatally shooting Herring, amounting to a needless tragedy, resulting in Payne's arrest for murder. The defense attorney argued that Payne followed Herring to prevent another accident and that Herring was accidentally shot while trying to wrestle Payne's gun away from her. Prosecutors claimed that Herring never got out of his truck. Based on surveillance footage, it was impossible to tell who pulled the trigger, but the state accused Payne of being the aggressor. In December of 2023, a jury found Payne guilty of 8 charges, including felony murder, malice murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and a possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. As a result, she was sentenced to life without parole. 8. Benjamin Hunt. During what began as a normal workday in Longton, Staffordshire in May of 2019, a 30-year-old mechanic named Benjamin Hunt spotted a man smashing the windows of his co-worker's son's car with a sledgehammer. But instead of reporting what they saw to the police and letting law enforcement handle the situation, Hunt and his co-worker Jonathan Hassel chased after the culprit, 25-year-old Christopher Walters. Hunt pinned Walters to the ground by his neck and continued to press down even after Walters had fallen unconscious. Police arrived at the scene to find Walters unresponsive, and he was pronounced dead later that day. Hassel and Hunt were charged with manslaughter. According to prosecutors, Walters initially resisted when Hunt pinned him to the ground, but Walters eventually stopped resisting. The prosecution argued that Hunt had a responsibility to ease up on the pressure against his airway while he was still conscious. While it was unclear why Walters damaged the car, nobody had a legal right to take his life for doing it. Hassel died just days before he was scheduled to go on trial. In 2021, Hunt pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 38 months in prison. During his sentencing hearing, Hunt's attorney told the court that his client acknowledged the wrongfulness of his actions and that he vowed to never act similarly to a suspected crime in progress in the future. Hunt was especially impacted by Hassel's death and the impact the case had on his friend's well-being, which is something he will have to live with for the rest of his life. 7. Gregory and Travis McMichael. 25-year-old Ahmad Arbery was on a routine jog in the coastal Georgia neighborhood of Satilla Shores in February of 2020 when he was chased down and fatally shot by 3 men in pickup trucks. The suspects were later identified as father-son duo Gregory and Travis McMichael and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan. Disturbing cell phone footage showed 34-year-old Travis McMichael exiting his vehicle and pointing a gun at Arbery. He then shot the victim during a physical altercation that ensued. Arbery died from his injuries. More than 2 months after the shooting, authorities charged the McMichaels and Bryan with murder and various other crimes. Prosecutors accused the defendants of targeting Arbery in a racism-fueled rampage, assuming that the victim was a criminal just because he was black. On the day of the murder, a surveillance camera captured footage of Arbery entering a house that was under construction. Nothing was taken or damaged inside the home, leading investigators to believe that Arbery stopped there for a drink of water. Regardless of his reasons for going in there, prosecutors argued that there was no reason to kill Arbery. In their own words, he posed no threat to anyone around him and was minding his own business when his assailants began pursuing him. All 3 defendants were found guilty of Arbery's murder in both state and federal court, ensuring that they will never step foot outside prison for the rest of their lives. During sentencing in the state case, the judge commented on how the McMichaels and Bryan ended up in their current situation due to their unwarranted attempt to take the law into their own hands. 6. Michael Larson. In September of 2023, police in North Ogden, Utah, received a call about a young man screaming for help during an altercation with an older gentleman in a residential neighborhood. Responding officers arrived to find 57-year-old Michael Larson pinning a teenager to the ground. The teen told police that he picked a broken construction sign up off the ground while walking home from a nearby skate park. The teen also said that Larson began yelling at him to drop the sign from a nearby residence. Even after the young man put the sign down as instructed, Larson allegedly continued harassing him. According to a police report, Larson shoved the teenager to the ground in a neighbor's yard and put him in a chokehold, then threw the boy's phone when he tried calling the police. Officers noted in the report that Larson said he was conducting a citizen's arrest and that he was not going to let someone steal from his street. However, the police were unconvinced that he had acted within his right to restrain another civilian. He was charged with aggravated abuse and interrupting a 911 call. But for now, the outcome of the case is unclear. 5. Ben Batterham. During the early morning hours one Saturday in March of 2016, 33-year-old Ben Batterham discovered an intruder in his young daughter's bedroom at the family's home in New South Wales, Australia. With help from a friend, Batterham restrained the man, who was later identified as 34-year-old Richard James Slater. Police arrived to find Slater unconscious and suffering from a broken neck. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he remained until his family made the heart-wrenching decision to take him off life support the next day. Many Australians were outraged to learn that Batterham had been charged with Slater's murder. Batterham himself argued that he was simply protecting his family like any father would have done if they found a stranger in their home. Slater's family was less receptive to Batterham's claim that he had rightfully made a citizen's arrest. Speaking with local media, Slater's mother, Beryl Dixon, accused Batterham of murdering her son in cold blood and demanded that he be brought to justice. In the meantime, Batterham remained in jail for 2 months before being granted bail as he awaited trial. When the highly divisive case went to trial in late 2019, Batterham's defense attorney argued that his client not only acted within his right to defend himself and his family, but that his actions did not cause Slater's death. According to the defense, Slater was revived by paramedics and repeatedly went into cardiac arrest afterward due to being obese and a long-time drug user. Following a 2-week trial, the jury found Batterham not guilty of both murder and manslaughter. Thankfully, he walked free with his record unblemished. But this outcome prompted Dixon to storm out of the courtroom when the verdict was read. 4. Luis Hernandez. On the morning of New Year's Eve in 2012, 26-year-old maintenance man Luis Hernandez received a call from his boss, who said that he had seen a burglar outside the Sunny Breeze Apartments in San Jose, California. The supervisor suspected the accused thief of burglarizing apartments on the same property in the past. However, he was unsatisfied with how long the police had taken to respond to his calls previously. Determined to catch the accused thief in the act, he asked Hernandez to help him make a citizen's arrest. Armed with a handgun, Hernandez confronted the alleged burglar, later identified as 36-year-old Christopher Soriano. When he and his boss tried to restrain the suspect, Soriano broke free. A violent altercation ensued, and Hernandez fatally shot Soriano. An autopsy concluded that Soriano was lying on the ground or crouching when he was shot from less than a foot away, leading to Hernandez's arrest for murder. Soriano had an extensive criminal record, but investigators were unable to determine whether he was actually committing any crimes that day. In April of 2013, prosecutors agreed to reduce the charges against Hernandez based on the evidence, which showed that the defendant did not mean to kill Soriano, but that he acted in an extremely reckless and criminally negligent manner. Hernandez pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in connection with the botched citizen's arrest and was sentenced to 4 years in county jail. 3. The death of Carl Picken. In August of 2020, 29-year-old Carl Picken was restrained in Birmingham, England, by 2 men who accused him of violating a restraining order. The men would later claim that they decided to take physical action against Picken after he struck out at them and threatened to kill one of them. They held Picken to the ground until police arrived, by which point he had fallen unconscious. Police arrested the two men, but the Crown Prosecution Service ultimately declined to press criminal charges against the pair. They cited an inability to prove that Picken's death was unlawful or that the suspects used unreasonable force. The decision came as a deep disappointment to Picken's mother, Kathy, who told Birmingham Live that she was unsatisfied by the vague findings of the investigative report on the case. She also described feeling haunted by her decision to allow a piece of her son's brain and his entire heart to be shipped to a pathologist for further examination. She did this after an autopsy yielded inconclusive results about the cause and manner of Picken's death. The report noted that the two men only meant to restrain Picken until law enforcement arrived, and that they immediately sought help for Picken as soon as they realized that he was not breathing. The men's claims that Picken had threatened them and that they urgently responded to Picken's need for medical assistance were corroborated by witnesses. 2. The death of Amit Kumar. In September of 2012, 34-year-old Amit Kumar was seen assaulting two people in a parking lot in Mululaba along Australia's Sunshine Coast. 6 witnesses, including 5 men and 1 woman, restrained and zip-tied Kumar while waiting for the police to arrive. During that time, Kumar began begging the group to ease up on the pressure they were putting on his body, claiming that he could not breathe. His pleas became increasingly urgent in nature, but the civilians who were restraining him did not believe he was telling the truth about his shortness of breath. They did not think he would be able to talk if he was not getting enough air. One of the people restraining Kumar was a doctor named Mark Yates. Although Yates was trained to recognize signs of medical distress, he did not immediately perform CPR on Kumar after the man fell unconscious. And by the time the life-saving measures were taken, it was too late. A coroner's inquest concluded that Kumar died from the combined effects of heart disease, obesity, and being restrained. No charges were filed against the individuals who restrained Kumar due to the insufficient evidence to prove that they were directly responsible for his death. However, the inquest found that as a trained doctor, Yates should have known to act sooner in order to prevent Kumar's demise. The coroner also ruled that the tragedy highlighted the dangers that come with medically untrained members of the public restraining a criminal suspect. This hinted at a need for more first aid training, or perhaps for people to let the police handle these situations whenever possible. 1. Nathan Smith. In 2019, residents of a neighborhood in Bristol, England, were terrorized by a string of thefts and break-ins that they felt the police were failing to thoroughly investigate. 38-year-old Nathan Smith was working as a live-in caregiver for a community member one night when he noticed a suspected burglary in progress. He jumped into action, tackling the accused serial thief to the ground. Smith held the man to the ground for the next 12 minutes until police arrived. During that time, the suspect, 39-year-old Craig Wiltshire, pleaded with Smith to ease up on the pressure he was putting on his body. But Smith refused, believing that Wiltshire was feigning medical distress in an attempt to gain an opportunity to escape. By the time the police arrived, Wiltshire was unconscious. He died in the hospital 2 weeks later, prompting allegations that Smith had acted out of anger and a desire to punish Wiltshire for his alleged crimes. Authorities charged Smith with manslaughter, but he maintained his innocence. He argued during his trial that he was unaware Wiltshire had a heart condition and was especially vulnerable to the effects of being held down. Smith also claimed that he did not know the position he used to restrain Wiltshire could kill someone. A medical examiner ruled that Wiltshire's death resulted from cardiac arrest and brain damage. An expert also testified that he believed Smith had used reasonable force, considering the level of knowledge he would be expected to have given his lack of training in restraining techniques. Smith was acquitted by the jury in the end. However, law enforcement officials still used the case as an example of why it's a bad idea for someone to take the law into their own hands.
10. Eric Stagno. Planet Fitness prides itself on being a judgment-free zone, but one man apparently took the slogan a bit too literally in 2018 when he was seen exercising naked at one of the company's gyms in Plaistow, New Hampshire. 30-year-old Eric Stagno stripped down to his birthday suit, left his clothing at the front desk, and walked around before doing yoga, prompting gym employees to call the police. When he was approached by law enforcement, he reportedly cited the gym's judgment-free philosophy, but the explanation didn't fly with the officers, who took Stagno into custody on suspicion of indecent exposure, lewdness, and disorderly conduct. Throughout the court hearings, prosecutor Kevin Coyle accused the defendant of testing the limits of the judgment-free zone. Coyle also claimed that Stagno's behavior traumatized the front desk employee who was working on the day of the incident. Stagno was about to go to trial when he instead pleaded no contest to disorderly conduct. The judge overseeing the case found him guilty of indecent exposure and imposed a 4-month suspended jail sentence on the man as a result. 9. Travis Williams. In what may very well be the strangest arrest on today's list, a 23-year-old Miami man named Travis Williams appeared to be covered in white powder in his mugshot after being arrested in 2012. Police reportedly stopped at the scene after receiving a report about the suspect screaming obscenities outside the Bayside Marketplace. Williams was allegedly screaming at customers and making threats. In the section of his booking paperwork that asks the police to identify any scars, tattoos, and unique physical features, an officer wrote, "None visible." It's unclear whether they wrote that because Williams was covered in what looked like a thick layer of baby powder, or if Williams actually lacked any distinctive features. The police report provided very few details, perhaps because the suspect was already well known to law enforcement. According to the Smoking Gun, Williams had a 94-page rap sheet by the time the bizarre powder incident occurred. According to records, the unemployed repeat offender had been arrested dozens of times for burglary, grand theft, marijuana possession, trespassing, larceny, battery, and other crimes. Naturally, the public was curious about why he was covered in powder, but authorities unfortunately declined to provide that answer in the arrest report. One internet rumor claimed that Williams had stolen 5 pounds of baby powder from a CVS store, but these reports also misidentify the suspect as a North Carolina resident and aren't mentioned in any credible media sources. And while Williams had been charged with cocaine possession numerous times, it seems unlikely that anyone would waste copious amounts of the expensive drug by rolling around in it. The reasons behind his strange appearance remain a mystery to this day. 8. Bryant Johnson. One night in 2017, police in Casper, Wyoming received a call about a drunk man who was behaving strangely at a local residence. They arrived at the scene to find the subject of the complaint, Bryant Johnson, who claimed he was from the year 2048 and that he was an alien visiting to Earth to warn Casper's residents of an impending alien invasion. Johnson claimed that the extraterrestrials would arrive in the city the following year. He wanted to caution locals to leave as soon as possible and said that he wanted to speak with the president of the town. According to K2 Radio, Johnson told the responding officers that he was only able to time travel by having aliens fill his body with alcohol before he stood on a pad that transported him to 2017. He also explained that he ended up in the wrong year and that he was actually supposed to be in 2018. Besides observing the obvious aspects of Johnson's bizarre behavior, police noticed that his eyes were bloodshot, his speech was slurred, and he smelled like alcohol. He was subsequently taken to an emergency room, where it was determined that he was unable to care for himself and that he was causing a disturbance in the ER. His blood alcohol level allegedly tested at .136, way over the legal limit of 0.08. And in the end, Johnson was charged with public intoxication. 7. John Bennett. In 2016, Canadian authorities arrested an American man for allegedly paddling across the border illegally on an air mattress he bought at Walmart. 25-year-old John Bennett reportedly told police that he resorted to the unconventional crossing method after trying to enter the country legitimately and being turned away. A local resident called the police after seeing him using a piece of wood to paddle the makeshift raft across the St. Croix River that separates Maine from New Brunswick. police found Bennett walking along a roadside in sopping wet clothes. Bennett claimed that he went to extremes to reach Canada because he felt a duty to protect his pregnant girlfriend who lived in the country. He said that the woman's ex-boyfriend was threatening her and that he was worried for her safety. As it turned out, officials denied Bennett entry at the Calais border crossing station because he was facing mischief charges in Canada at the time. After being turned away, most people would have given up, but Bennett was determined to get where he was going. In the words of the judge who oversaw his criminal case for the illegal crossing, Bennett intended to get to Canada, come hell or high water. In the end, though, he was sentenced to 2 months in jail. 6. Jesus impersonator. One day in 2018, sheriff's deputies responded to a call about a naked man who was seen lurking behind someone's home in Magoffin County, Kentucky. When they arrived, they found the suspect lying in some grass near the property. When asked for his name, he replied, "Maybe Jesus," and refused to provide any more information. According to law enforcement, he appeared to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, possibly even both. The homeowner who made the 911 call claimed that the man was pouring liquid out of a gasoline jug around their house. When they asked him to leave, he allegedly went into the homeowner's car and stole several things. During his ride in the back of a police cruiser, the man yanked out the cord of one of the vehicle's radars. Apparently, he finally started to cooperate after arriving at the local jail, where he admitted that his name was Austin Johnson. The police were about to fingerprint him, so it's safe to assume that he knew they would figure out who he was eventually and decided to come clean. Authorities charged Johnson with burglary, indecent exposure, criminal trespassing, criminal mischief, public intoxication, and providing false identifying information to police. Unfortunately, the outcome of the case is unclear. 5. Albert Maruna. During a sting to catch predators who were targeting victims online in 2017, an undercover investigator began chatting with a man who was later identified as 22-year-old Albert Maruna from Youngstown, Ohio. Law enforcement would later accuse Maruna of believing that he was speaking with a minor and having bad intentions. According to an arrest report, the conversations began when Maruna responded to a dating ad posted by the fictitious victim. When he learned how young the individual was, he allegedly said he didn't believe in age. As you can likely imagine, the discussion soon became inappropriate, with Maruna even bringing up marriage at one point. He also tried to arrange a meeting with the undercover officer and made some unusual requests for what he wanted the person to wear. Maruna was accused of trying to bribe the undercover investigator to meet face-to-face with promises of bringing Sprite soda and chicken Alfredo. Police nabbed him when he was on his way to the meeting and found a container of the pasta in his car. To make things even weirder, Maruna reportedly didn't seem to understand the problem with his actions during questioning. However, the reality of the situation must have eventually sunk in, and he ultimately pleaded guilty to 1 charge of possessing criminal tools, 3 charges of importuning, and 4 charges of disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. As a result, the judge sentenced Maruna to 77 days in jail, followed by 120 days of house arrest and 3 years of probation. 4. Alva Richards. Ken and Annette Bienlein were fast asleep on the morning of their 55th wedding anniversary in 2018 when a van crashed into their Newburgh, Wisconsin home. The couple's neighbor was the first to call 911 after hearing a loud bang at around 3:15 in the morning. When the pair looked outside, they saw the vehicle embedded into the house, about 15 feet, 4.6 meters off the ground. It had driven up a retaining wall and smashed into the side of the residence. Ken Bienlein told Fox 59 that he awoke to the sound of the collision and found himself just inches from the minivan's rear bumper, while the front bumper ended up in the attic. Annette was in the bathroom at the time of the crash, which most likely saved her life. She said that if she'd been in bed, she would likely no longer be around. The close call left the couple feeling grateful to not only be uninjured, but alive. They were overcome with relief when they looked at each other and realized that they were both okay. According to a police complaint, the van's driver, Alva Richards, was found unconscious in the driver's seat. At some point, he fell out of the vehicle and onto the ground. He appeared disoriented and under the influence of drugs or alcohol. The man allegedly told a responding deputy that he smokes weed daily, but couldn't remember when he last used marijuana. Richards also said that he suffered from a seizure disorder. When his van was searched, a small amount of marijuana and a grinder were found inside. In the words of Jamone Engels, who worked for the company that towed the vehicle, "Every time you think you may have seen it all, something like this happens and it resets." Richards was taken to the hospital for a blood draw and was charged with reckless endangerment and possession of THC. And consequently, he was sentenced to a year in jail for his behavior. 3. Justin Lou Harris. When a wedding officiant asks if anyone objects to the marriage they're about to perform, most people don't expect anyone in the crowd to speak up. But that's exactly what happened to a Nevada man named Justin Lou Harris when he was at the altar in 2011. He'd invited his 55-year-old mother to attend the ceremony in Douglas County, but she disapproved of his bride. According to Harris, she walked into the church yelling and screaming. He said that he then carried his mother to the car because she had mobility issues. The pastor seemed to corroborate Harris's version of events, telling responding officers that the woman was very upset and pleaded with her son not to marry his fiancée. Harris's mother, on the other hand, told police a much different story. She claimed that as soon as she walked in the door, her son grabbed her by the neck of her shirt and dragged her out of the church, even though she had rheumatoid arthritis and walked with a cane. Authorities subsequently charged Harris with domestic battery, disorderly conduct, and coercion. And instead of exchanging vows and taking wedding photos, he posed for a mugshot. 2. Heather Underwood. 32-year-old OnlyFans model Heather Underwood was shocked when she learned that there was a warrant out for her arrest in 2022 over a garbage-related incident that happened 8 years earlier. The British bombshell, who lived in the English village of Nutton, told her social media followers that she was gobsmacked when a police officer knocked on her door one morning to inform her of the warrant. Underwood said she had no idea what the cop was talking about and that she was so shocked she began to shake. She was taken into custody before she was told that the warrant stemmed from an incident in 2014, when she left some bags of garbage on the ground next to the bins rather than inside of them. After sitting in a locked cell for several hours, Underwood was informed that the case had been discontinued, and she was released from custody. But it didn't make the ordeal any less traumatic or embarrassing for the young woman, who was especially horrified by the fact that she had no privacy while using the jail bathroom. Underwood further explained that she'd just moved into her previous residence when she found the garbage bins already full from her former tenants. Left with no other choice, she put her garbage next to the bins. She received a letter about it, but never heard anything else about the situation until her arrest 8 years later. It all amounted to what she described as a huge waste of time and money, not to mention needless emotional trauma. 1. Melody Duchesne. Since 2009, a video of a woman going on a rampage over her fast food order had gone viral on multiple occasions. The incident reportedly happened on New Year's Day at a McDonald's in Toledo, Ohio, where Melody Duchesne became outraged at an employee for refusing to serve chicken nuggets at 6:30 in the morning. Surveillance footage shows Duchesne punching the employee at the drive-thru window before trying to climb through it and into the restaurant. She then shouted, "I am going to end you," and threw a bottle through the window. Throughout the ordeal, staff members could be heard talking about calling the police before Duchesne finally sped off. She claimed she was drunk at the time of the incident, but it didn't seem to serve as a mitigating factor for her actions. As a result, Duchesne was sentenced to 60 days in jail and was ordered to pay for the damage she caused to the drive-thru window.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather let a thief get away with stealing your most expensive electronic device, or would you take your chances on making a citizen's arrest at the risk of something going terribly wrong, including the possibility of getting hurt or arrested? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the channel.